Well, hello, Assurance family, and welcome back to another Holy Week Daily Assurance devotion. We have a unique opportunity today because usually we end these devotions on Friday, but because it's Holy Week, we wanted to do one on Saturday. And the scripture I'm going to read to you today is not an uplifting scripture, to be honest with you. Yesterday we talked about the cross, and today we talk about the tomb. Tomorrow we'll get to the empty tomb, the greatest day in the history of the world. But today, Jesus is in the tomb. And I want to read a passage to you today from Matthew chapter 27, verses 57 through 66. It starts like this. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus, a follower of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. This was commonplace that someone of his stature could have a tomb like that. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and then went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. Can you imagine what they may have been thinking in that moment? And then it says this, it says, the next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. Sir, they said, we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver, right, they call him a deceiver, that deceiver said, after 3 days, I will rise again. I'm sure they were mocking him, at least that's how I envision it. So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the third day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first, meaning that they believe Jesus was a liar and a deceiver and a threat to them. But this will be even worse of a threat. Take a guard, Pilate answered. Go make the tomb as secure as you know how. So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. I try to imagine what that day was like. Whenever I have gone through something rather serious, something hard, something difficult, or as a pastor been a part of something difficult, there are moments where there is just silence. And the silence honestly speaks louder than any words. The silence is powerful because in the silence, so much is being said without anything being said at all. And I'm sure as Mary sat there mourning the loss of a teacher and a rabbi and also a son, I'm sure there was very painful, difficult silence. And then as the guards stood there, because the religious leaders still viewed Jesus and his followers as a threat, I am sure that was an awkward silence as well. I wonder if they told jokes or made comments to one another when they were there. I don't know. When there was more than one particular person standing there at least. But I'm sure there were moments of silence. And in that silence, there may even been an awkwardness. Now, it's funny I mention that because I'm one of those people that when I'm in public situations, I confess this. I don't like the awkwardness of silence. If I'm in a staff meeting or a Bible study or any other situation and a question is put out there and it's just hanging, I think anybody who works with me can tell you that I give it a couple seconds to maybe a few, but a few is a lot for me. And if no one says something, I then want to fill it with something else. Because for some reason, the silence scares me. I don't know why, but it does, at least in public situations. And yet, oddly, when I get home, the silence doesn't seem to bother me. Because I can promise you this, my son has no problem filling the silent moments with loudness. And so I often find myself going outside, sitting on the back porch with a glass of tea, just taking in the silence. Now, it may not be literal silence in that there are probably birds chirping and all of that, but it's still silence in the typical sense. And I kid you not, this happened just the other day. It was getting kind of loud in my house. As you can imagine, an 8-year-old cooped up all day long has a lot of energy. And I needed a break. And so I went outside. I sat on the back porch and I drank my glass of tea. And as I sat there, something about the silence just stuck out to me. I could hear birds chirping. I could hear the signs of spring. And yet what still stuck out to me the most was the moments of silence. Because in that silence, I realized that as I looked out into my backyard and saw the trees start to show their beauty, right, as spring comes in to form, I realized somewhere right now, a nurse or a healthcare worker or someone helping people in the front lines is not in a situation surrounded by silence. They're in a situation surrounded by voices and machines beeping, and they're running from place to place. And it's weird because in that moment, with all of that happening, that silence at my house, boy, oh boy, did it seem heavy. Because I knew that things were going on around me that I couldn't change. Things were going on around me that were beyond my control. Things were going on around me that were not pleasant and ideal. And that people were putting their lives in risk, right? To help fight what we're going through right now. The silence was deafening. And yet, in the midst of that, I found hope. Because then I started thinking once again about the silence we found here in the scripture. Whether it was a guard standing by himself or a guard with another guard, right? Whether it was Mary and Mary staring at the tomb, wondering what happened and how everything went wrong, watching all of their dreams just shattered, I was reminded of something. I was reminded that it is Saturday. Jesus is in the tomb. But tomorrow's Sunday. And everything changes. I was reminded that even in the midst of the silence around me, as I was prayerfully reflecting on those who are going through an extremely difficult time right now, and I so bad wish I could make it go away, I was reminded that God is greater than all of this, that God is working in this, and that God is alive. And that nothing can separate us from God. Because Saturday eventually turned into Sunday. Now, I don't want to jump too far ahead to Sunday. Because that kind of takes away the weightiness of this moment, right? But yet I can't. I can't stop jumping ahead. Because I want to sit in this weightiness, I want to sit in this silence, and I want to observe the silence, and I want to take it on because I think there's value in that, right? I don't even know how to put it into words, but there's value in that. But yet, I can't not see it through the lenses of what I know is coming tomorrow. And you know what? Thank God I can't. Because what's coming tomorrow changes everything. And it gives me hope in the silence. Even when things are hard, it gets me up in the morning. Even when I don't have answers, and there's so many answers I don't have that I wish I had, it still holds me solid with its eternal truth. Saturday of this particular week in history was difficult for all who loved Jesus. And the silence is deafening and important. And right now, when we sit on our back porches, the silence can be deafening as well. But we are people of hope because we know Sunday's coming. And we know, too, that we shall get through this because Jesus is alive because he's alive, we have that eternal hope. I jumped ahead. I'm not supposed to. That's against the rules of Lent. Yeah. So what? It's Saturday, but Sunday's coming. See you tomorrow.